This is Serious Grower Podcast. I am Anna. I'm an entomologist. I'm a scientist, and I am using this podcast to talk to all kinds of growers and eaters who are serious about their farms, their gardens, their local food systems. And I'm asking, how can science help? Today's co-host is Casey. She is an experienced market farmer growing out in Montana's Bitterroot Valley. Her and her husband, Jesse, are transitioning into non-commercial farming. They're homesteaders now. You'll be hearing plenty from her because her experience brings so many unique perspectives and because she's my best friend.
I wanted you to know I just pulled all my garlic yesterday and it looks like the best crop ever. I actually remembered to shut off like the water into it like at a reasonable time 2 weeks ago instead of just being like, oops, forgot to shut it off. And now it's time to harvest and now a bunch of them are split. Anyway, every single one looks perfect. It's amazing. Well, I had like 4 stalks that, there was like 4 of these little duds. Yeah. Pretty good. I was excited about that. So here's my thinking in my garden this week because I was pulling that garlic out, and this is my berry and wood chips garden, and I have hascaps in there, raspberries. I just planted the dwarf sour cherries in there this year. I think I want to do some black raspberries.
Ooh, black raspberries.
Yeah, because they're just so yummy. But anyway, long story short, I think I messed up by putting so many wood chips like in my aisles, which I'm like, this will stop everything. Well, you know what loves it? Raspberries. Yeah. So they just like run her so far through that real loose stuff, been just like taken over in all those wood chips. And finally it occurred to me, it's like, I need to have something I can mow between rows because raspberries do not like being mowed. So I'm like, now I'm thinking, do I need to scrape up all the wood chips, plant grass there, and then just have like 2 little strips I can do with like the mower between each row of fruit?
What were you thinking about? Like an orchard grass?
Well, I've done orchard grass in where we had our orchard and kind of ends up being like so tufty and hummocky, which is great because it doesn't have runners. I would love something that doesn't have runners, but also that tufty stuff is hard to just mow. Here's my original idea is like, what if I had a robot mower? Like a Roomba, but mower. We saw these all over Europe. Like a bunch of these places we went, it was like a Roomba, but a mower. And they were so quiet. It's not like gas powered. I guess it's electric.
Are they string trimmers or are they mowers? Like, do they have metal blades?
I think it was a mower, but I never flipped them over or anything.
They're so cute. That's the first thing I'd want to do is flip them over.
If I could have grass aisles. It's always fun to design your ideal garden where I'm like, my ideal berry garden now would have grass strips between the fruit rows that I would mow, but not me. It'd be a robot mower.
Do you remember there was a time where I had just moved back to New Hampshire and I was kind of feeling lonely, like I wanted a dog? And I didn't feel like secure enough where I was living to get a pet. So I got a Roomba. Do you remember this? It was like really strangely scratching that itch because I would get text from it. And it would like text me because it was like stuck under the bed. And it was like, come and get me. And I remember telling you about it, and you're like, yeah, like, don't they like run over poop all the time? And like, you'd get a text to be like, I ran over poop again. And I'm like, Roomba, where are you even finding poop?
Yeah, I don't even have a pet. Where would you find poop? Well, it's so funny. I have the same idea at the same time, but it was so close. Me and Jesse, that is. He came home and I was like, you know what we need? He's like, I know what we need, a Roomba. I was like, wait, I was going to say a robot mower. We might be getting a Roomba, long story short.
A Roomba or a Roomba mower?
A Roomba.
An actual Roomba.
Yeah, I think it might have already been ordered. We don't have it yet, but...
Oh, man. I should have sent you my Roomba because I don't use it.
What? I ran over poop too much, huh?
Too much. Where are you finding this poop? I'm very excited about the idea of these robot mowers. And like, there's so many that are coming out in the market. And like, for a while, it was just something we were talking about. It's like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? But it's like the price point is coming down. Like, I think we're at a point now that like regular people can think about doing it. So I'm really curious to find out like what's in Europe, because that's the thing is like, all the European farms are like a little bit smaller, like their tractors are a little bit smaller, where like American gear is designed for like corn and like huge, huge, huge. So the growers I work with in New England, like I just wish they could just go to Europe. We were almost like, I think there's like a local supply place that has a relationship with Italy. Like they come back and forth a lot. Maybe that's what I should get into, is like being an importer, exporter of European farm equipment.
There you go. I know smaller farmers, I think, are really into these Russian tractors. I forget the names of them. It's like something you could very easily work on and swap out parts. Like
Yeah.
that's a big thing with tractors, I guess, is like the right to work on it. Or what do you call that?
The right to repair.
Right to repair. Yeah. I guess the Russians, they're just like pop out stuff and they don't want you to send it back to repair it, for them to repair it. I've like been on some of these friends' tractors and the speedometer, it's in all these like Cyrillic characters. I'm like, wow, what does this even mean? You have to just figure out what all the little levers and stuff are for. Not with the writing though.
I mean, to be fair, I think that's like if you had a really old tractor, you would be in a similar situation, right?
That's true. And we have this old, well, two of them, because one of them's a parts tractor. We still never had them running, but this is a project long ago. We decided we wanted to have we have solar panels here, but we want to have an electric tractor that could run off of the solar energy. And, you can retrofit these older tractors. And these are two Alice Chalmers vintage old tractors, and there's not much to them. So it's like one that would pretty easily, you could be able to just like convert it to electric. Well, it's all a bunch of rusty parts outside now, and it's like very wishful thinking. We got some new treads on one of the tires, but yeah, we had the parts tractor to come with the, one we were going to work on, and this could still be a project someday coming up. So I would love that, because I was just weed whacking out there, all these like, hood and radiator under the grass. I'm like, we need to move this stuff. But yeah, that ever gets done, that'll be cool.
That has your husband's name written all over it, right?
That was his project. How'd you know? Yeah, he already did. He like fixed the transmission for the working one. I think we might have had to pull parts off of the parts tractor for that one. But now it's all just a bunch of parts laying there in the grass. That transmission's good to go. So I think it would be really cool someday, and that would just like be all end all if we had solar powered farm, solar powered tractor. Yeah, that'd be pretty great.
All right, you might have heard of right to repair legislation. I am leaving a link in the show notes to a resource that has a little bit of a repository of all of the right to repair bills or laws that exist in various states. Because as of right now, we do not have strong legislation at a federal level. So different states have different rules. These measures often include language on what tools, what parts, what software, or instructions manufacturers should provide to independent repairers or product owners so they can repair their own products. Because right now we don't have as much control as, well, we used to. I also did a little bit of research about irrigation strategies for garlic crops, and I went down some rabbit holes. So just in general, after planting in autumn, water deeply to maintain about an inch per week until the ground freezes. And then you are overwintering that garlic. During winter dormancy, you do not need to water. You're resuming watering in spring and early summer, and you're going with 1 to 1.5 inches weekly to power that foliage growth and maximum bulb expansion. You are going to stop watering completely 2 to 3 weeks before harvest in the late summer when the lower leaves begin to turn yellow. This does a few things. It prevents rot. It allows the outery, papery wrappers to cure. Casey nailed it this year, and we're so happy for her. I did read a few resources about irrigation strategies for garlic crops, and I found some interesting cultural differences across the globe. I read one study from South Korea. They are really focused on compounds like allicin, other organosulfur metabolites. So these metabolites determine the nutritional and medicinal value of garlic. That's very important for us because we like the flavor, but these South Korean studies were really looking at this from a medical point of view, like the health aspects. Of course, the studies in the US focused on efficiency and yield. So we're talking about precision agriculture. I'm not going to get too deep into this, maybe another day. But we might think about watering in terms of how much time to run the tap on our farm, and we kind of adjust according to our experience with our soil and our crops. We know if we run it for an hour, that's like about an inch of water. Modern smart irrigation relies on strategies that measure weather, soil, or plants themselves to determine exactly when and how much to water crops. So instead of watering on a rigid timer, these weather-based systems calculate how much water evaporates into the air. Soil sensors will track moisture directly at the roots. Other advanced techniques intentionally starve plants of water at specific times to improve fruit sweetness, or alternate watering sides to trick the crop into conserving resources. Ultimately, choosing the right strategy helps farmers maximize crop quality and avoid wasting water. So, this is a bit of a tangent, but such an important part of modern agriculture, and especially at the moment when water is becoming such an important resource. Back to my conversation with Casey about electric tractors.
Yeah, over in Europe, Germany did have a lot of solar stuff. They had a lot of like government incentives because power, like in gas and things like that, are really expensive there. So, and they were very incentivized to have solar. And other countries weren't like that. Austria wasn't quite like that. Switzerland wasn't the same. But Germany, lots of solar panels. And that's where we saw these robot mowers that I think were probably electric because they were so quiet, and maybe solar. I don't know. So yeah, robot mower, berry row aisles.
Yeah.
May.
I'm going to get into this because I want to know how the robots control themselves. Because when this first came out, the reason it wasn't readily adoptable is that the technology had to be guided a little bit. Like, you had to have perfect rows. I think they actually had like physical barriers to keep the robot from veering in one way or another. But now I think they have really similar technology as some of the self-driving cars. Like, there's like optical sensors that keep them in line.
Yeah, these are things I don't know about because I only had this grand idea this week. But I was thinking, at first, like physical barriers, what would that take? And then, it's only like 5 aisles. Couldn't I just program like a route for it to do? I don't know exactly.
I think that's how some of the more sophisticated Roombas work, right? So like your low-end Roomba is just bopping all around, like bing, 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 bing. And like if you let it do its thing enough, it covers everything. But the really fancy ones, like you draw a map of your living room and you go da, 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 and like it kind of does a raster pattern. I think that's how the robot lawnmowers work.
Yeah. Well, every time we saw one, we'd be like, oh, it's so cute. But yeah, oftentimes it'd be like off on a hillside, like somewhere, just like doing its own thing.
2 other things that I'm actually genuinely excited about is weed zappers. So like they have essentially like I think it's like the same kind of technology that like those electric fly swatters use. Like if something's connected, like it zaps weeds.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. Like you have to like program it. But also there's this new kind of technology that we're just getting excited about, which is UVC for disease control. So this is like robots go out at night and expose the undersides of leaves to a UV light that doesn't exist on Earth. So what's very funny about this, so like if you think about UV, like the stuff that you get a sunburn from, it's UVA and UVB. UVC only exists in space. It doesn't make it through the atmosphere. It's kind of dangerous to be around. Like it's dangerous for your eyes to be exposed to it, but they're selling it to like hospitals as a disinfectant tool. This is the technology they use to disinfect water. There's like a lot of opportunity to like build a well in some African town somewhere, and like there's UV sterilization. Like they basically run it over like a sluice and expose it to UVC. So there's robots that will do this to control powdery mildew or other like disease pathogens on plants. And
but only the underside of leaves.
Well, that's where the pathogens live.
Oh, is that right?
Well, some of them, yeah. But it's important that it be a robot because that way it's not people being exposed to the light.
Yeah. Wow. That is so futuristic. sounding.
really is. And
Well,
like,
up the Steri pin, remember? We had this for like water instead of a water filter. We used this UV light pen for a little while we were doing this backpacking trip. Very early on Steri pin days. Like I haven't even thought of Steri pin for so long. I was like, you shine this UV wand into your Nalgene of creek water, kind of stir it around with the UV wand. But then if it ever got cold out, the batteries would just be like, nope. And we're like, oh no, what do we do now? I guess we'll just drink the water without Steri-Pen.
like shut up,
But yeah,
it's UVC.
UVC. Yeah. Okay. And it's like outer space UV.
Yeah, it's a frequency of UV light that doesn't exist on Earth.
So, and it just is like killing all the microbes or anything on the underside of the leaf, like everything, probably.
Yeah, probably everything. So I'm just looking at like the overview for SteriPen, and they make the point that because UV light cannot penetrate solid particles, ensure your water source is completely clear. So if it's muddy or murky, it won't work. So yeah, it is like a line of sight kind of thing that it has to be exposed. And it's not long. It's just like a brief moment, like a second or two to be exposed to it too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another thing that is kind of interesting about some of the work in this UV exposure, in some circumstances, they were looking at exposing plant pathogens to other types of UV, like UVA and UVB, at the wrong time of day. So it would mess up their clocks and they would not turn, because like, like a lot of these pathogens, like they have like, for lack of a better word, a vegetative state and a reproductive state and like a penetrative state. They have to like be able to get into the plant. And I think when they were exposing these pathogens at night, it was making them confused. They didn't know what time of day it was. Like it was throwing off their internal clocks. And so they stayed vegetative. And so they didn't get infective. I don't know enough about plant pathogens to speak to this, but there's behavior being shown, right? Like these little fungi, hyphae, were showing behavior because of the light exposure they were getting. It was nuts.
Yeah, well, I know that fungus, they do different things in the dark as opposed to in the light. Yeah, it's like their fruiting phase. They need light. But at the same time, some plants, yeah, you could definitely mess them up by shining lights on them at night when they are supposed to be in their dark cycle. I wonder if there's unintended consequences that could happen with that UV sterilizer or whatever, leaf sterilizer. What are they calling it?
Oh, I don't know. I had to look it up. But I'm definitely seeing them trying this out in strawberry in California.
Yeah, I could see that being for, a fungicide sort of purpose. That's so interesting. Yeah. There's a couple different like fungi sort of diseases that could potentially be treated this way.
Yeah, I think it's actually effective for some of the insect pests too, like the little ones, like the little aphids and leafhoppers and stuff like this. Well, another thing that reminds me of is I think the reason it was readily adopted in California is a lot of the beds that they had were kind of designed around vacuums. They had these like huge vacuums that they used to suck up lygus bug, like tarnished plant bug. And it's so effective that it actually disrupts biocontrol. So they were having to like reintroduce biological control organisms after using vacuums, which is so crazy.
Oh, wow. That is so crazy. We've used vacuums before, but it's already too late by then. If you're using vacuums for like indoor plants for spider mites.
For spider mites?
Yeah, because it's like if you can see them and they've already started making webs, it's like you're already too late. There's already like so many probably there.
Yeah, once you see spider webs with spider mites, it's way too late.
Well, and it's like treating instead of doing preventative sort of treatment, and then you're treating like the symptoms at that point and never actually stopping the, progress to begin with. So anyway, vacuums in the garden. Okay, so vacuums in the garden is another thing I wanted to talk about. Because we used to have this neighbor, and every once in a while, we would see her outside vacuuming, and we're like, what is she doing? And she would be over there in her garden with a vacuum. And we looked up to her a lot. We're like, wow, what is she doing? Like, because she helped us out a lot when we first started gardening. And actually, this garlic that I just pulled yesterday, That's so amazing and maybe best crop ever. We first got our first, couple bulbs from her, and that's the crop that we're still planting to this day. Anyway,
Aw.
but I asked her one day, she came over. I was like, "Did I see you vacuuming in your garden?" She's like, "Oh, yeah." I was like, "What were you vacuuming in your garden?" She was like, "Well, she had some sort of like seed spill, of a weed seed. And instead of just like sweeping it up with her hands, she would meticulously go out there with the shop vac, vacuum up, it was maybe like lamb's quarter seeds or something like that, or like pigweed seeds that had like spilled. And yeah, her garden was amazing. I still haven't gotten to the point of vacuuming weed seeds, which I'm like 80% meticulous in the garden. I'm not
Right.
100% meticulous. I feel like 80% is fine.
I think that's ideal, and I'm biased because I'm an entomologist, right? So when they go out and do studies where they're looking at like the optimal balance of like biocontrol agent to pest, it's usually the gardens that are like a little bit weedy.
Yeah, you got to be able to roll with the punches. And also just like looking at a bell curve to hit that last 20% of perfection.
Mhm.
Like each percent takes so much more effort than that last percent. Like 80% is fine. To get to like 99%, that would take like 50% more effort. I forget how the math works, but bell curve and stopping at 80%. I learned this in school. This is what we learned in school.
I'm really inspired by this vacuuming because I, the other day, was saying, really, ideally, to have weeds that go to flower in your garden, you're not supposed to do that because of weed rain, but you're kind of waiting until the very last minute before they rain down seed because you want to provide resources for floral resources, really. You have a window of time between the floral resources and that producing seed, and if you miss that window, you can always vacuum it up like that.
Vacuum it up.
I didn't even think about that as being a possibility.
Yeah, I really do appreciate older folks' gardens who've been gardening for, 50 years. They have just like the most cultural resource knowledge of any like people that I could ever imagine. But yeah, I don't know how long she's been gardening for, but she had a beautiful garden. We got our beautiful garlic from her, and she would use a vacuum in her garden.
All right, so I tried to find out whether or not the UVC treatments and the UVC technologies, the little robots that drive through strawberries, have actually been adopted in California, because sometimes you just hear about these promising experiments, but it sounds like we are seeing these adopted in commercial fields. We're still in early days, but things look very promising. We all know California produces about 90% of the United States strawberry crop. Most of the other 10% comes from Florida. So strawberries have historically been very heavily reliant on synthetic chemical pesticides to survive. That's for insect pests, that is for disease. Even though UVC pest management has only been adopted in about 3% of California's strawberries, that equates to a couple thousand acres. We are seeing massive chemical reductions. This technology has been proven to cut chemical use by 70% on active commercial farms. So you can see how much promise there is here. Casey and I met again a week or so later. We dropped back into a conversation about Biosphere 2 from a couple of weeks ago. And in that time, I did watch Spaceship Earth, which was a documentary about Biosphere 2. So just to remind you, Biosphere 2 is a story about 8 visionaries who locked themselves in a massive self-engineered replica of Earth's ecosystem in the 90s to see what they could do. And the background of this is bizarre. It was definitely counterculture. These were a theater troupe that did this from San Francisco. So this documentary is pretty good. It covers the ecological hurdles, like the dropping oxygen levels that Casey told me about a few weeks ago, and, the intense media scrutiny that followed. But I needed to bring that up because Casey and I get into that again. But guess what? She got her robot vacuum.
We have the robot vacuum now, and right now it's doing its thing. And its thing seems to be like, doing straight lines back and forth. And then all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, let me go hump the coffee table leg some more. And like go way out of its way to go to the coffee table, get stuck on its leg some more. It was doing great, going in straight lines away from there. And it was like, wait a second. Let me go back to the coffee table. If that was a lawnmower, that'd be scary.
Well, I have done a little bit of research about robot agricultural implements.
Oh, okay, that's exciting. I'm in this like robotic phase where if the robot could do it for me, let's just do that.
Right? Something that really struck me funny after we were talking about Biosphere 2.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about Biosphere 2 and I watched that documentary. Was it you that recommended I watch the documentary?
No, I didn't know. I think I might have heard of the documentary. I don't know if I've seen it.
It's called shit, what is it called? I don't remember, but I watched it and they're a bunch of weirdos. And it was on one of those like streaming services where they immediately play something else. And I kind of wasn't paying attention at the end. And they started a documentary about Burning Man. And so like I was watching a documentary about Burning Man and I was like, oh, this changed tone a lot. Okay. I like wasn't paying attention. So I like now really confuse Burning Man and Biosphere 2. But it got me thinking about big investments in kooky ideas. And if anything, the space race was the biggest investment in the kookiest idea possible. Was it Gil Heron Scott that sang the song Whitey's on the Moon?
I don't know. This is something you should do like at the intermission of the podcast is play that song.
But you're familiar with the song. There's all this stuff going on Earth, but Whitey's on the moon. Aren't we happy because Whitey's on the moon? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know. This sounds old timey, but I'd give it a listen.
It's kind of emblematic of how I've always kind of felt about this kind of thing, which is like, wow, they spend an awful lot of money to do the space stuff. What do we get from that? Like, there's people who are starving. There's things happening on Earth that could really benefit from that money. And from his point of view, the Black community could have really used some investment. But, Whitey's on the moon, so we're all really proud.
On the moon.
This, when I was reading about it, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe there is some value to this kind of endeavor, right? As a scientist, I should be more open to big investments in kooky ideas. And so something that the space race in the 1960s brought us is like cell phones and computers and stuff like that. Investments that they made to have computer technology that could fit on the spaceship is what led us down the road to have handheld computers. I was thinking about this when I was thinking about your robot lawnmower. And I was reading about precision agriculture. So this is the field of research right now that kind of melds technology and applicable tools for agriculture. And how much technology that we use now that came from Mars rover technology.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. It's funny what.
Right? So if the US government throws like $1 bajillion at this ridiculous goal, like downstream, it actually does progress things down the road. So what made me thinking about it was we were talking about if you just put a robot lawnmower out in your garden plots, there's a really good chance it would mow down important things, right? So I was looking into how they avoid doing that.
This is what I need to know.
Right. So there's a couple different ways, and a couple of these different ways have real implications on the price. Right. So some of the fancier robots, you can get like a model. I think you sent me a link to some models that are for home lawns. So the Roomba that seems like it's trying to hump your coffee table, that has like super random technology. Like it just kind of rasters all around your living room and it'll bump into something and back up and keep going. And you're just kind of brute forcing getting your carpet clean because it's just going to be doing it forever. Like it could just go for as long as this battery can go. And you're not too worried about it chewing up anything. Unless, of course, it finds some poop in your house.
Yeah. Which with the dog and cat or, cat throw up or, that is constant just possibility.
Right. The next phase in technology is two things. One is sensing objects. If they're sensing objects, they're using probably LiDAR technology or AI cameras, having to rely on things that look different from what they're trying to do. So like this kind of works with lawns because lawns look really different from things that you don't want to mow. And there's something called RTK GPS positioning. So this is like down to the centimeter talking to a satellite, and you can map out areas in your garden. So if you got one of these, it would come with an app and it would show you a picture of your garden, and you'd basically paint out areas where you didn't want that robot to go. So it's not necessarily using information it's getting from the ground. It's just saying, here is my little plot of land that I'm in charge of. Here's the places I'm allowed to go, and here's the places I'm not allowed to go.
First was envisioning this new vision of robot lawnmower to mow my aisles between my berries. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, can't we hook it up to like GPS, have it do the same route every time? And
Yeah.
anyway, it sounds like only recently did technology catch up or get to the point where you can do that. Now, how much does that one cost, I wonder? That's the most expensive one, isn't it?
I think you could get something like that for like $700 or $800.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure, because what I was looking into was the robot string trimmer, right? Because that way, like, you can get bigger stuff and you don't have to worry about it getting like caught up. You know, if it was a lawnmower, that makes sense because it's like flat. I know your garden is nice and flat, but like if you had a garden that was like a little bit more weird terrain, like a string trimmer might be better.
Well, that's interesting. It is a pretty flat garden.
No matter what, if you're shopping for something, you should look for something with RTK GPS positioning. And you have NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory to thank for that.
Yeah, thanks NASA for spending all that money. So that
Why
I
be
can
on the
have a
moon?
GPS robot lawnmower. RT.
Real-time kinematic GPS provides centimeter level position accuracy. And that is going back to the Mars rover. In the 90s, they developed this technology for the Mars rover. And then John Deere partnered with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to license that technology. So like the self-driving tractors that are like driving all over Iowa right now came from that technology.
Whoa.
It's
Thanks,
so cool.
NASA again.
Right? Something that sounds like it's more like in the future is that like they do have technology on Curiosity and Perseverance, where like they're taking pictures of the Mars rocks and like bouncing light off of it to see what kind of minerals that is. And they are starting to think about adding those on like tractor booms or drones to pick up chlorophyll density or like nitrogen levels, water stress in plants, like all this technology that they wanted to send to like do its thing and then send the data back and get real information. They are now applying to crop health here on Earth. It's crazy.
You know, you think it'd be the other way around. Be like, let's figure out agriculture and then go to space. But it's like, no,
Right.
let's shoot the moon, literally, and then we'll back off from there and then use this stuff for agriculture, the stuff people need to survive.
There's something about like putting all those constraints on the technology that accelerates the precision of it. So a lot of the folks who are doing research in like controlled environment agriculture, when we say controlled environment agriculture, we're talking everything from like high tunnels to like a plant factory where like you control everything. A lot of the folks who are in that world right now, like they came from a world where like their PhDs and their postdocs were paid for by NASA because they were trying to figure out how to grow things in space so they could support life other places.
That's wild. Well, NASA, I don't know how much money they get these days. I guess it all just depends on the administration. Still, it's like way more money than a single farm. If only there was some sort of like consortium. I don't know what you would call it. Be like, hey, let's grassroots bring this tech to the people who need it for cheap. Consortium.
Right, but that just goes to show you how we value things. Our government was willing to spend all this money to develop a technology for one tool. And then the rest of us kind of get the scraps from it because nobody's going to say, oh, it's worth developing that tool so that like farmers' lives in Iowa are a little bit easier, or like your garden gnome doesn't get run over by your robot lawnmower. You know?
I know all the important stuff. Yeah, that's just wild. Well, I mean, it was a race. It was like to claim dominance. Okay, the robot's coming in here. It seems to be attracted to me. Can you hear it? It's kind of loud.
No, I
Like
can't
wherever I
actually.
am, it's like, I'll come by you now.
But Casey, you can totally understand why my robot vacuum cleaner was a good stand-in for a pet.
It goes.
Where is it? Oh, there it is.
I am. Well, it's just our first week, so it's still pretty, novel. But anytime I'll like leave through a doorway, it'll be right behind the door, so I can't come back in the door. I'm like, I'll just wait for the vacuum to leave so I can go back inside now. And somehow it takes forever. There's always something to complain about technology too. Dang it, NASA. Wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. I could like press the home button, but it is literally like vacuuming under my chair now. It was way over there humping the coffee table leg. And then it's like, Casey's in the kitchen. Let me go over there.
I love
She probably misses me. I love Casey.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there because Casey got a little too distracted by her new pet robot. Also, a correction because we were talking about Gil Scott Heron's spoken word poem, Whitey's on the Moon. I got his name wrong. I wanted to correct that. Let me know if there's anything that you'd like to learn more about here. I want to know, is this stuff scary to you, or are you excited by all these new possibilities? Whenever you hear about precision agriculture, you kind of go, why? But you know what? I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. But it does feel pretty critical to remember that technology for the sake of technology feels really kooky, really unhinged until we find a way to fit it into our human lives and make things better here on Earth. It's all a matter of perspective. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Serious Grower Podcast is a production of New Hampshire Community Supported Research. If you are interested in becoming a co-host or would like to learn more about our mission to democratize agricultural research, visit our website at nhcsr.org and make sure you check out our YouTube channel at NHCSR, where we're sharing insights from the agricultural research community and we are vlogging about our research efforts on the farm. You can support this work by liking and subscribing, and even better, consider joining our Patreon community.
Lord, couldn't you have given him one more chance?